One of the most chilling realities in many serial killers' cases is that many of them could have been stopped sooner. In some cases, survivors went to police, gave names, even described their attackers. But their warnings were ignored, and while authorities dismissed the danger, these killers kept on murdering, adding more victims, more suffering, and more years of horror that could have been prevented. Welcome back to Prison Stories. In this video, we're looking at 5 disturbing cases where police had the chance to stop a serial killer but failed. And the result was a body count that never should have been so high. May 27, 1991. A 14-year-old boy named Conrad Sintasunphone was seen stumbling through the streets of Milwaukee. He was bruised, bleeding, and barely conscious. 2 women who found him immediately called police, certain the boy had been attacked. When officers arrived, neighbors pleaded with them, insisting this was not just a drunken dispute. But Jeffrey Dahmer appeared on the scene, calmly convincing police that Conrad was his 19-year-old boyfriend, who had simply had too much to drink. Despite the protests of bystanders, officers accepted Dahmer's story. They escorted the child back into Dahmer's apartment, the very place he had just escaped from. Inside that apartment were human remains hidden in plain sight. Within hours, Conrad was murdered, and the negligence didn't just cost one life. In the weeks after this incident, Dahmer went on to kill 4 more men: Matt Turner, Jeremiah Weinberger, Oliver Lacey, and Joseph Bradehoft. Each of them died because police refused to act when they had the chance to stop him. When Dahmer was finally arrested in July 1991, the truth about that night came out. The public was outraged. The 2 officers involved were fired, but later reinstated after appeals, a decision that sparked even more anger. To many, it felt like there was little real accountability for a mistake that allowed multiple murders to happen. The case remains one of the darkest examples of what happens when warnings are ignored and justice fails. John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Rignall. March of 1978, a young man named Jeffrey Rignall was lured into John Wayne Gacy's car. Gacy knocked him out with chloroform, then dragged him back to his house. For hours, Rignall was tortured, bound, beaten, and assaulted before being dumped half-conscious in a park. Somehow he survived. Rignall didn't stay silent. He went straight to police, described his attacker, and even provided the make and model of Gacy's car. But his report was brushed aside. Authorities at the time treated him as unreliable, more concerned about his lifestyle than the brutal attack itself. The fact that Rignall had been drugged and nearly killed wasn't enough to spark a serious investigation. This dismissal proved devastating. In the months that followed, Gacy continued his killing spree, luring young men and boys into his suburban Chicago home, torturing and murdering them before burying their bodies under the floorboards. When Gacy was finally caught in December 1978, police discovered the remains of 29 victims buried on his property, and more thrown into the nearby river. Jeffrey Rignall had given them an early warning, a chance to stop a serial killer before the full scale of the horror unfolded. But just like so many other survivors, his cries for help were ignored. Dennis Nilsen and Douglas Stewart. In 1982, Douglas Stewart was walking home from a London bar when he encountered a seemingly friendly man, Dennis Nilsen. Nilsen invited him back to his flat for drinks. But once there, Stewart suddenly found himself under attack. Nilsen attempted to strangle him with a tie, pinning him down on the floor. In a desperate struggle, Stewart managed to fight him off, landing blows until Nilsen let go. Terrified and shaken, Stewart fled the apartment and went straight to the police. He told them exactly what happened, that Nilsen had tried to kill him in his own home. But instead of launching a serious investigation, officers dismissed his account. They labeled it a domestic dispute between homosexuals, treating Stewart as if he were exaggerating or simply involved in a lover's quarrel. No charges were filed. That dismissal would prove catastrophic. Because of the police's refusal to take Stewart's complaint seriously, Nilsen continued killing men for another year. By the time he was finally caught in 1983, the total number of his victims was estimated to be at least 15. Young men and boys whose lives could have been spared if Stewart's warning had been taken seriously. Stephen Port, the Grinder Killer. By 2014, Stephen Port had already begun using Grindr to lure men to his flat. One night, he drugged another young man, who quickly lost consciousness. Hours later, the victim woke up confused, distressed, and shouting in the street near Barking Station. Witnesses saw he was clearly unwell, and both British Transport Police and paramedics were called to the scene. This should have been a turning point. Here was a visibly shaken victim, and right beside him was Stephen Port, the man responsible for his condition. Yet when officers questioned the pair, Port brushed it off, claiming the man had simply been drinking too much before they met. For his part, the victim was too embarrassed and frightened to press charges, telling police he didn't want to get involved further. And so, in a shocking lapse of judgment, both men were allowed to walk away. No deeper investigation was made, no background check was run, and no forensic testing was ordered. Port slipped back into the shadows. The consequences were devastating. In the months that followed, Port murdered 4 young men: Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor, each killed with fatal doses of GHB. When Port was finally caught and put on trial, the survivors who had encountered him earlier, including those who had been drugged but lived, gave testimony under anonymity. They explained how they had tried to raise concerns, but no one listened. Their words echoed the grim reality. Had they been heard, the killings could have been avoided. Just like Jeffrey Dahmer in Milwaukee, John Wayne Gacy in Chicago, and Dennis Nilsen in London, the Stephen Port case revealed another pattern: how police negligence, compounded by the social stigma around homosexuality, allowed a predator to keep killing. Robert Pickton, the woman who escaped his farm. In 1997, long before police uncovered the mass graves on Robert Pickton's pig farm in British Columbia, a woman narrowly escaped becoming one of his victims. Pickton had lured her back to his property, where he attacked her with a knife. Somehow, she fought back and managed to get away, badly injured and terrified, before running to authorities for help. When police arrested Pickton, they had everything they needed to stop him. The survivor's testimony was detailed and consistent. She described how he had tried to kill her, and investigators even found her blood and the weapon on the farm. Yet, in a shocking twist, the attempted murder charges were dropped. The case collapsed in court, and Pickton was released without serious consequence. That single decision cost dozens of lives. Freed from scrutiny, Pickton continued luring vulnerable women to his farm. For years, he murdered them, disposed of their remains among the pigs, and carried on undetected while families begged police to take missing persons cases seriously. By the time he was finally caught in 2002, investigators believed Pickton had killed at least 49 women, and possibly more. Like Dahmer, Gacy, Nilsen, and Port, Robert Pickton's story is another devastating reminder of what happens when survivors aren't believed, and when police negligence allows killers to keep hunting. These 5 cases show a disturbing pattern. Time and again, survivors found the courage to speak up, but their warnings were dismissed. Each time, it gave serial killers a chance to keep killing, leaving behind more victims, more families destroyed, and more questions about how justice failed. From Dahmer in Milwaukee to Pickton in Canada, the lesson is painfully clear. Ignoring survivors doesn't just silence their voices. It costs lives. Thank you for watching Prison Stories. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next one.